The wine glass felt heavy in my hand as I watched my wife Jessica waltz through our front door with two people who had no business being in my house on Valentine's Day. I'd spent 3 hours preparing her favorite meal, herb-crusted salmon, roasted vegetables, the works. The dining room table was set with our wedding china, candles flickering like tiny beacons of hope in what I now realized was a completely hopeless situation. "Oh, Mike," Jessica said, not even bothering to hide her eye roll. "Stop pretending you're romantic. Real men don't waste time cooking." Behind her stood Ethan Morrison, all 6 feet of smug real estate broker in his $1,000 suit, and Ms. Carroway, Jessica's boss from the law firm. They were both trying not to laugh. Ethan actually smirked at me like I was some kind of circus act. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Mike Sullivan, 42 years old, and I've been installing security systems in this weathered New England mill town for 15 years. I'm not fancy, but I'm good at what I do. I fix things. I protect things. And until that moment, I thought I was protecting the most important thing in my life, my marriage to the woman I'd loved since college. "I thought we were having dinner," I said, setting down the wine glass with more control than I felt. "Just us. Like we planned." Jessica's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Plans change, Mike. Ethan and Ms. Carroway needed to discuss the Henderson case, and I figured we could multitask. You don't mind, do you?" The way she said it wasn't really a question. It was a challenge. In front of these people, in my own house, she was daring me to make a scene. I looked at Ethan, who was already making himself comfortable on my couch, and then at Ms. Carroway, who was checking her phone like my living room was her personal office. These people were treating my home like a conference room, and my wife like she was single. "Of course not," I said, forcing a smile. "Let me just put this food away." As I scraped the salmon into containers, I could hear them laughing in the next room. Jessica's voice carried over the others, animated in a way I hadn't heard in months. When was the last time she'd laughed like that with me? Our daughters, Emily and Sophie, came downstairs around 8. Emily, 14 and sharp as her mother, took one look at the scene in the living room and raised an eyebrow at me. Sophie, 11 and still young enough to be confused by adult stupidity, asked why we weren't eating dinner. "Mom's working," I told her, which was apparently hilarious because it sent another wave of laughter from the living room. "Dad," Emily said quietly, "this is weird, right? It's Valentine's Day." Smart kid, too smart. She could see what I was trying not to see. By 9 o'clock, I'd had enough. I walked into the living room where Jessica was sitting closer to Ethan than she ever sat to me anymore, and cleared my throat. "It's getting late," I said. "The girls have school tomorrow." Ms. Carroway looked up from her phone. "Oh, right, I should get going." She gathered her things and headed for the door, but Ethan didn't move. "Ethan's going to stay a little longer," Jessica said without looking at me. "We're not quite finished with the case discussion." Case discussion? Right. I'd seen how they were discussing cases, heads bent together over Jessica's laptop, Ethan's hand resting on her shoulder like it belonged there. "I'll be upstairs," I said. "Good idea," Jessica replied. I lay in bed for 2 hours listening to their voices downstairs. At 11:30, I heard the front door close and Jessica's footsteps on the stairs. She slipped into bed without saying a word, turned her back to me and pretended to fall asleep immediately. That's when I knew for certain. My wife was cheating on me. The next morning, Jessica left early for work, claiming she had to prep for a deposition. She kissed my cheek like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just humiliated me in front of her boss and lover on what was supposed to be our day. I dropped the girls at school and went to work, but I couldn't concentrate. Every security system I installed that day felt like a joke. How do you protect something when the threat is already inside? Around lunch, I decided to swing by Jessica's office. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe there was an explanation for everything. Maybe I was the crazy one. Her secretary Linda told me Jessica was in court all afternoon. But as I was leaving the building, I saw Jessica's car in the parking lot of Morrison Realty, 3 blocks away. I sat in my truck across the street for 20 minutes before I saw them come out together. Jessica and Ethan walking close, talking intently. He opened her car door for her, something I hadn't done in years, apparently. She smiled at him the way she used to smile at me. They drove separately to the Riverside Motel on the outskirts of town, the kind of place that rents rooms by the hour and doesn't ask questions. I followed at a distance and parked behind a dumpster where I could see the entrance. They went into room 12 together. Jessica's car was registered under her maiden name on the motel log. I could see it through the office window. For 45 minutes, I sat there staring at that door, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was planned, calculated. They had a system. When they finally came out, Jessica's hair was different, and Ethan was straightening his tie. They kissed by her car, not a peck on the cheek, but a real kiss. The kind of kiss that said this wasn't their first time. I waited until they drove away, then I got out of my truck. Ethan's BMW was still parked in front of room 12, gleaming silver in the afternoon sun. Beautiful car, expensive, the kind of thing a man takes pride in. I pulled out my keys and dragged them along the driver's side door, spelling out cheater in letters deep enough to require a full repaint. Then I took out my pocket knife and put a nice, slow leak in the rear tire. As I was walking back to my truck, I heard a camera click. Mrs. Ramsey from down the street was standing by her car with her phone pointed at me. "Mike Sullivan," she called out. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Ramsey was the town's unofficial news network. Whatever she saw would be common knowledge by dinner time. "Just admiring the cars, Mrs. Ramsey," I said with a wave. "Beautiful day for a drive." She took another picture. 2 hours later, I was at Red's boxing gym, working out my frustration on a heavy bag, when Jessica burst through the door like an avenging angel. She was still in her court clothes, navy suit, heels that clicked like gunshots on the concrete floor. "You son of a bitch," she said, loud enough for everyone in the gym to hear. She threw her phone at my feet, showing Mrs. Ramsey's photo of me standing next to Ethan's car. "You vandalized his car?" I stopped punching the bag and turned to look at her. Red and the other guys were trying to pretend they weren't listening, but the gym had gone dead quiet. "Prove it," I said. "Mrs. Ramsey has pictures. Pictures of me standing in a parking lot. Last I checked, that wasn't a crime." Jessica's face was red with fury. "I know what you did, Mike. This is harassment. I could have you arrested." I picked up a towel and wiped the sweat from my face, taking my time. Around us, the gym was so quiet you could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. "You want to play lawyer with me, Jess?" I asked. "Let's dance, but you might want to think about what comes out in discovery." Her eyes flickered with something, fear, maybe, or calculation. She knew what I meant. She knew that I knew. "This isn't over," she said. "No," I agreed. "It's not." She turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving me alone with a gym full of guys who suddenly found their workouts very interesting. Red walked over, a 60-year-old ex-boxer who'd seen everything twice. "You okay, kid?" "Never better," I said, and went back to hitting the bag. But I wasn't okay. I was angry. Angrier than I'd ever been in my life. And as I drove home that night, I realized something that should have scared me, but didn't. I was just getting started. The next few days passed in a haze of fake normalcy. Jessica acted like nothing had happened, chatting about her cases over breakfast while Emily and Sophie got ready for school. She even kissed me goodbye, a performance for the girls' benefit. But I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was planning something. I started paying attention to details I'd ignored before. How she always kept her phone face down on the table, how she'd started working late 3 nights a week, how she'd bought new lingerie that I'd never seen her wear. On Thursday, I was installing a security system for the Hendersons when I overheard Mrs. Henderson talking to her sister on the phone about Jessica and Ethan being seen together at Rossetti's, the fancy Italian place on Main Street. They'd been there Tuesday night while I was home helping Sophie with her math homework. They looked very cozy, Mrs. Henderson was saying. I mean, I'm sure it was just business, but... business. Right. That evening, I went to Dave's Electronics to pick up some equipment for work. Dave Kowalski had been my best friend since high school, a guy who knew every piece of technology in town and most of the gossip that went with it. "Heard you had some excitement at the gym," he said while ringing up my order. "News travels fast." "Faster when Mrs. Ramsey's involved." Dave leaned across the counter. "Look, Mike, I don't know what's going on with you and Jess, but if you need to talk..." "I need a favor instead," I said. "You still do those high-end security installations for the rich folks?" "Sure, why?" "I want to upgrade my system at home. Full coverage, motion sensors, cameras, the works, and I want to do it myself." Dave raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of equipment for a house your size. Call it professional development." He didn't ask any more questions, just loaded up a box with everything I'd need to turn my house into Fort Knox. As I was leaving, he called after me. "Mike, whatever you're planning, be smart about it." "Always am." Friday night was Emily's school play. Jessica and I sat together in the auditorium like a normal family, watching our daughter perform in the spring musical. I was proud of Emily. She had a small part, but she was giving it everything she had. During intermission, Ethan appeared. He was alone, which struck me as odd until I realized he was there for Jessica, not the play. "Mike," he said, extending his hand like we were old friends. "Good to see you." I shook his hand, squeezing just a little harder than necessary. "Ethan, funny seeing you here. You got kids in the play?" "Oh no, I just love supporting local theater." His smile was practiced, the kind real estate agents use on difficult clients. Jessica mentioned Emily was performing tonight. Of course she did. "That's nice of you," I said. "Jessica, did you tell Ethan about Emily's performance?" Jessica's cheeks flushed. "I might have mentioned it." "Honey," I said, putting my arm around her shoulders. "You didn't tell me you'd invited Ethan. I would have saved him a seat." The three of us stood there in an awkward triangle while families flowed around us. Ethan's smile was getting strained, and Jessica looked like she wanted to disappear. "Actually," Ethan said, "I should probably find a seat before the second act starts." "Good idea," I said. "Wouldn't want you to miss anything important." He walked away, but not before giving Jessica a look that said they'd talk later. "That was unnecessary," Jessica hissed as we sat back down. "What was unnecessary? Being polite to your colleague? You know what you were doing." "Yeah," I said. "I was being a good husband." The second act started, but I wasn't watching the play anymore. I was watching Jessica, who kept glancing toward the back of the auditorium where Ethan was sitting. Even in a room full of people, even with our daughter on stage, she couldn't keep her attention on her family. After the play, we took Emily out for ice cream to celebrate. She was excited, talking about the performance and her friends, and for a few minutes it felt like we were a normal family again. But Jessica kept checking her phone, and I knew she was thinking about Ethan. Saturday morning, I started installing my new security system. I told Jessica I was upgrading our protection after some break-ins in the neighborhood, which wasn't entirely a lie. There had been a few burglaries recently. What I didn't mention was that the system I was installing was designed to monitor everything that happened in and around our house. Every entrance, every room, every conversation. "Isn't this a little excessive?" Jessica asked, watching me install a camera in the living room. "Can't be too careful," I said. "Besides, it's good for the business. Potential clients like to see what I'm using in my own home." She seemed to accept that explanation and went upstairs to work on some case files. I finished the installation in 4 hours, then spent another hour configuring the system on my laptop. Every camera, every sensor, every microphone was connected to a secure server that I could access from anywhere. If Jessica wanted to bring her boyfriend into my house again, I'd have front row seats to the show. That afternoon, I went to Murphy's Tavern for a beer and found Jules behind the bar. Jules was an ex-cop who'd retired to bartending after taking a bullet in the knee during a domestic dispute. He knew everyone in town and heard everything worth hearing. "Mike Sullivan," he said, drawing me a beer without being asked. "How's life treating you?" "Can't complain." "That's not what I hear." Jules leaned across the bar, lowering his voice. "Word is you and the missus are having some trouble. People talk too much in this town." "They do, but sometimes they talk about interesting things, like certain lawyers being seen around town with certain real estate brokers." I took a sip of my beer. "Is that so?" "It is, and sometimes they talk about how those same real estate brokers are bragging about their conquests to anyone who'll listen." That got my attention. "Ethan's been talking?" "Not to me directly, but sound carries in a place like this, and that boy's got a big mouth when he's had a few drinks." Jules moved down the bar to serve another customer, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my beer. Ethan was bragging about sleeping with my wife, in public, to anyone who'd listen. The cold, hard thing in my chest grew a little bigger. I was finishing my second beer when Monica Walsh walked in. Monica was Jessica's best friend from law school, a real estate attorney who'd moved to town 2 years ago. She was attractive in a sharp, calculating way, and she'd never liked me much. She spotted me at the bar and walked over with the kind of smile that meant trouble. "Mike," she said, sliding onto the stool next to me. "Fancy meeting you here." "Monica, how's business?" "Good. Yours?" "Can't complain." She ordered a martini and turned to face me. "I heard about the incident at the motel, with Ethan's car." "Don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't." She sipped her martini. "You know, Mike, Jessica's been under a lot of stress lately. Her job, the kids, maintaining a household. Sometimes people need outlets." "Outlets. Ways to relieve pressure. You understand?" I understood perfectly. Monica wasn't just Jessica's friend. She was her enabler. Maybe even her accomplice. "That's interesting advice," I said. "I'll keep it in mind." "You should. And you should also keep in mind that Jessica's career is really taking off. She's being considered for partner at the firm. It would be a shame if anything interfered with that." The threat was subtle, but clear. Don't make waves, or Jessica's career might suffer. The implication being that I should just accept being cheated on for the good of the family finances. "I appreciate your concern for Jessica's career," I said. "I really do. But you might want to be careful about giving marriage advice. I hear your own divorce was pretty messy." Monica's smile disappeared. Her divorce had been the talk of the town 6 months ago. Her ex-husband had caught her with a client and taken her for everything she was worth. "That's different," she said. "Is it?" She finished her martini in one gulp and stood up. "Just remember what I said, Mike. Some things are more important than pride." After she left, Jules came back over with another beer I hadn't ordered. "That woman's poison," he said. "Tell me something I don't know." "She's been in here twice this week with your wife and that Morrison kid. The three of them, thick as thieves, talking about you like you weren't even human." I looked up from my beer. "What kind of talking?" "The kind that makes a man want to check his life insurance policy." I left Murphy's with my head spinning. It wasn't just Jessica and Ethan anymore. Monica was involved, encouraging the affair, maybe even orchestrating it. And they were all talking about me like I was some kind of obstacle to be removed. When I got home, Jessica was in the kitchen making dinner. She seemed almost cheerful, humming while she cooked. The girls were upstairs doing homework. "Good day?" she asked without turning around. "Fine. You?" "Great." I had lunch with Monica and we got some good work done on the Henderson case. Lunch with Monica. Right. I wondered if Ethan had been there too. That's nice, I said. Monica seems to have a lot of opinions about our marriage. Jessica's humming stopped. What do you mean? Ran into her at Murphy's. She had some interesting things to say about stress relief and career priorities. Jessica turned around, her face carefully neutral. Monica's just looking out for me. I'm sure she is. We stared at each other across the kitchen, and I could see her trying to figure out exactly what Monica had said and how much trouble it might cause. Mike, she said finally, I think we need to talk. Do we? Yes. About us. About what's been happening. For a moment I thought she might actually confess. Tell me about Ethan, apologize, try to fix what was broken between us. But then Emily came downstairs asking for help with her science project, and the moment passed. Later, Jessica said, and turned back to the stove. But later never came. After dinner, Jessica claimed she had work to do and locked herself in the home office for the rest of the evening. I helped the girls with homework, watched TV, and went to bed alone. Around midnight, I heard Jessica's phone buzzing with text messages. She was in the bathroom and I could hear her typing responses. Long responses, the kind you don't send to colleagues about work. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and made a decision. If Jessica wanted to play games, I'd play games. But I'd play to win, and unlike her, I wouldn't need help. Sunday morning brought the kind of gray, drizzling weather that matched my mood perfectly. Jessica slept late while I made breakfast for the girls, then announced she was going to the office to catch up on paperwork. On Sunday? Emily asked. Big case, Jessica said, not meeting anyone's eyes. You know how it is. I knew exactly how it was. Sunday afternoon affairs at the Riverside Motel were probably cheaper than weekday rates. After Jessica left, I sat down with my laptop and accessed the security system I'd installed. The cameras were working perfectly, recording everything in high definition. More importantly, the system I'd set up could do more than just record. It could track. I'd installed a GPS tracker in Jessica's car while she was sleeping. Nothing illegal about a husband keeping track of the family vehicle for security purposes. The tracker showed her car at Morrison Realty, then moving to the motel, just like I'd expected. But this time, I wasn't going to just sit and watch. This time, I was going to do something about it. I called my brother-in-law Greg, Jessica's younger brother. Greg was a good guy who'd never liked Ethan much, and I figured he deserved to know what his sister was up to. Mike? Greg sounded surprised to hear from me. What's up? I need to talk to you about Jessica. Can you meet me for coffee? Sure. Everything okay? We'll talk when I see you. We met at Dunkin' Donuts on Main Street. Greg looked worried, which was appropriate, given what I was about to tell him. Your sister's having an affair, I said without preamble. Greg nearly choked on his coffee. What? Are you sure? I showed him the photos I'd taken at the motel, the GPS tracking data, everything I'd gathered over the past week. Greg's face went through several expressions: disbelief, anger, disappointment. Jesus, Mike, I'm sorry. I had no idea. There's more. Her friend Monica is encouraging it, maybe even setting it up. Monica Walsh? That bitch? Greg had met Monica at family gatherings and hadn't been impressed. What are you going to do? I'm going to destroy them. Greg looked uncomfortable. Mike, I get that you're angry, but... They humiliated me in my own house, Greg, on Valentine's Day, in front of my daughters, and now they're planning God knows what, while I'm supposed to just sit back and take it. Have you thought about counseling? Maybe you can work it out. I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. You can't counsel someone who doesn't want to be counseled. Jessica's made her choice. Now I'm making mine. Greg was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, What do you need from me? Information. You still talk to your parents, right? They always liked me better than Jessica anyway. They do. They think she's gotten too big for her britches since she became a lawyer. Good. I want them to know what's really going on. Not gossip, not rumors. Facts. Greg nodded slowly. I can do that. And Greg, when this all comes out, and it will, I want you to remember who told you the truth first. Monday morning, I started phase 2 of my plan. I went to the bank and moved half of our joint savings into a new account that only I could access. Legally, it was my money too, and I had every right to protect my assets. Then I called the credit card companies and canceled Jessica's cards, citing suspected fraud. Again, perfectly legal since I was a joint account holder. By the time Jessica got to work, her financial world had shifted significantly. She called me around 10, her voice tight with controlled fury. What did you do? What do you mean? My credit card was declined at Starbucks, and I can't access our savings account online. That's strange. Maybe there's been some kind of security breach. You know how careful banks are these days. Mike, I know this was you. That's a serious accusation, Jess. You might want to be careful about making statements you can't prove. She hung up on me. Around lunch, I got a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Monica. I ignored it. That evening, Jessica came home in full lawyer mode, armed with printouts and ready for battle. She cornered me in the garage while I was working on my truck. You moved our money, she said. I secured our assets. Given some of the rumors going around town, I thought it was prudent. What rumors? I straightened up and looked at her. About you and Ethan Morrison, about how you're planning to leave me, about how Monica's been encouraging you to have an affair. Jessica's face went white. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because I have photos that say otherwise. For a moment, she looked genuinely scared. Then her lawyer training kicked in. You've been following me? I've been protecting my family, something I should have done a long time ago. Mike, listen to me. Whatever you think you know. I know you've been screwing Ethan Morrison at the Riverside Motel every Tuesday and Thursday for the past month. I know Monica's been covering for you and encouraging you. I know you told Ethan details about our marriage that you had no right to share. And I know you're planning to divorce me and take the girls. Jessica stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to end it with Ethan. You're going to stop taking advice from Monica. And you're going to figure out if you want to be married to me or not. Because I'm done playing games. And if I don't? I smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. Then you'll find out just how creative a man can get when he's got nothing left to lose. Jessica turned and walked back into the house without another word. Tuesday evening, I was at Red's gym working out when Monica walked in. She looked out of place in her business suit and heels, like a shark in a swimming pool. We need to talk, she said. No, we don't. Yes, we do. You're making a mistake, Mike. I stopped punching the bag and turned to face her. The gym had gone quiet again, just like when Jessica had shown up last week. Am I? Jessica's a good woman. She deserves better than this. Better than a faithful husband who works hard and loves his family? Yeah, you're right. She definitely deserves better than that. Monica stepped closer, lowering her voice. You don't understand the situation. Enlighten me. Jessica's career is at a crucial point. She's being considered for partner. That comes with financial security, prestige, opportunities for the girls. But it also comes with pressure, with demands on her time and attention. So she should cheat on me? She should have support, understanding, someone who recognizes that her needs might be complex. I stared at Monica, finally understanding what she was really saying. You set this up, didn't you? I don't know what you mean. You introduced her to Ethan. You encouraged the affair. You've been covering for her, lying for her, helping her plan this whole thing. Monica's face didn't change, but her eyes flickered. Bingo. Why? I asked. What do you get out of destroying my marriage? I get to see my friend happy. Bullshit. There's something else. Something you're not telling me. Monica stepped back, suddenly looking less confident. You're paranoid, Mike. Maybe you should talk to someone about that. She turned to leave, but I called after her. Monica, whatever game you're playing, I'm going to figure it out. And when I do, you're going to wish you'd minded your own business. She left without looking back, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She was scared, which meant I was on the right track. Wednesday morning, I decided to take a sick day and do some detective work. I drove to Monica's office and parked across the street, watching the building. Around 10:30, Jessica's car pulled up. She went inside and stayed for 2 hours. When she came out, she was with Monica and Ethan. The three of them stood on the sidewalk talking intently, and I could see Jessica was upset about something. Ethan kept trying to touch her arm, but she kept pulling away. Finally, Jessica got in her car and drove off. Monica and Ethan went back inside together. That evening, Jessica was quiet at dinner. The girls chattered about school while Jessica pushed food around her plate, lost in thought. Everything okay, Mom? Sophie asked. Fine, sweetheart. Just tired. After dinner, Jessica disappeared into the home office again. I could hear her on the phone, her voice low and urgent. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. She was arguing with someone. Around 10, she came out of the office looking defeated. Mike, she said, we need to talk. I'm listening. Not here. The girls might hear. Can we go for a drive? We ended up at the town park, sitting in Jessica's car in the empty parking lot. The silence stretched between us until Jessica finally spoke. I made a mistake, she said. Which mistake would that be? Ethan. The affair. All of it. I waited. It started innocently. He was helping me with a case, and we were spending a lot of time together. Monica said it was natural to feel attracted to someone you work closely with. Monica said. She said marriages go through phases, and sometimes people need to explore their options to appreciate what they have. So this was all Monica's idea? Jessica was quiet for a long time. She introduced us. She suggested we work together on cases. She was the one who said I deserved better than a blue-collar husband. The pieces were starting to come together, but I still didn't understand Monica's endgame. What does Monica get out of this, Jess? I don't know. I thought she was just being a friend. And now? Now I think she's been manipulating me. Us. The whole situation. Jessica started crying, which should have made me feel something. But the cold, hard thing in my chest had grown too big for sympathy. I want to end it, she said. With Ethan. I want to try to fix our marriage. Do you? Yes. I know I hurt you, Mike. I know I was wrong. But we can get through this, can't we? I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman I'd married wouldn't have cheated on me. The woman I'd married wouldn't have humiliated me in front of our daughters. The woman I'd married wouldn't have let her friend manipulate her into destroying our family. I don't know, Jess, I said. I honestly don't know. We drove home in silence. That night, Jessica slept in the guest room, and I lay awake thinking about Monica Walsh and what she really wanted. By morning, I had a plan. Thursday morning, I called in sick to work again and drove to the town hall. I had a friend in the records department, Sally Martinez, who owed me a favor from when I'd installed her security system for free after her house was broken into. Mike, she said, looking surprised to see me. What brings you here? I need to look up some property records, specifically anything involving Monica Walsh. Sally raised an eyebrow. Official business? Personal, but important. She led me to a computer terminal and showed me how to access the public records database. It took me 2 hours to find what I was looking for, but when I did, everything clicked into place. 3 years ago, Monica had tried to buy the building that housed Jessica's law firm. She'd put in the winning bid, had financing lined up, everything. But at the last minute, Jessica's boss, Ms. Carroway, had swooped in with a higher offer and bought the building herself. Monica had lost out on a deal that would have made her rich and given her control over several downtown businesses, including Jessica's law firm. But that wasn't all. Digging deeper, I found that Monica had been dating Ethan Morrison 2 years ago, before she moved to town. Their relationship had ended badly, with Ethan owing Monica money from a failed real estate deal. Monica wasn't helping Jessica have an affair out of friendship. She was orchestrating the destruction of Jessica's marriage and career while simultaneously setting up Ethan to take the fall. She was playing both sides, manipulating everyone, and planning to emerge from the wreckage as the winner. But why target me specifically? I kept digging and found the answer in an old newspaper article. 5 years ago, when Monica was still married and living in Springfield, I'd been hired to install a security system in her house. I'd caught her cheating on her husband with a client, and, when she'd tried to bribe me to keep quiet, I'd told her husband anyway. Her divorce had been nasty and expensive, and she'd lost almost everything, including her reputation and her first attempt at building a successful law practice. Monica Walsh wasn't just manipulating Jessica's affair. She was getting revenge on me for destroying her first marriage. I printed out everything I'd found and drove straight to Greg's house. Jessica's brother was working in his garage, and he looked up when I pulled into his driveway. "Mike, you look like hell." "I figured it out," I said, spreading the documents on his workbench. "Monica's been playing all of us." I explained what I'd discovered, the property deal, the relationship with Ethan, the connection to her divorce. Greg's face got darker as I talked. "That manipulative bitch," he said when I finished. "She's been planning this for years." And Jessica walked right into it. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to give Monica exactly what she wants. And then I'm going to take it all away from her." Friday evening, I put my plan into motion. I called Jessica and told her I wanted to try to work things out, but we needed to have an honest conversation with everyone involved. "What do you mean, everyone?" "You, me, Ethan, and Monica. Clear the air, get everything out in the open." Jessica was hesitant. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not? If we're going to fix this, we need to deal with the people who helped break it." After some persuasion, Jessica agreed to set up a meeting for Saturday evening. I suggested the old cabin at Miller's Lake, a place where we could talk privately without interruptions. "Why there?" Jessica asked. "Because it's neutral territory, and because I don't want the girls to hear any of this." Jessica called Monica and Ethan, and they both agreed to meet us at the cabin at 7 o'clock. Monica was apparently eager to help mediate the discussion. Saturday afternoon, I drove to the cabin early to set up. The place had been abandoned for years, but it still had electricity and running water. More importantly, it had excellent cell phone reception and was isolated enough that we wouldn't be disturbed. I set up 3 hidden cameras and positioned my laptop so I could live stream everything to a private server. Then I called Greg, Dave, Red, Jules, and several other friends and family members. "I'm going to send you a link," I told each of them. "Tonight at 7, click on it and watch. Don't record it, don't share it, just watch. You'll understand why." At 6:30, I was ready. Jessica arrived first, looking nervous. She'd dressed carefully, not too formal, not too casual, like she was going to a job interview. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Positive. It's time for the truth." Monica and Ethan arrived together, which was interesting. They were supposed to be on opposite sides of this situation, but they looked like co-conspirators. "Mike," Monica said, extending her hand like we were old friends. "I'm glad you decided to take this approach. Mediation is always better than litigation." I couldn't agree more. We sat around the cabin's old dining table, the 4 of us in a circle like we were playing poker. In a way, we were. "So," Monica said, taking charge like I'd known she would, "why don't we start by everyone sharing their feelings about the situation?" "Great idea," I said. "Jessica, Why don't you go first? Jessica looked uncomfortable. I made a mistake. I hurt Mike, and I hurt our family. I want to make things right. That's a good start, Monica said. Ethan? Ethan shifted in his chair. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I never meant for things to go this far. Jessica's a beautiful, intelligent woman, and I was attracted to her, but I respect her marriage. Interesting, I said. So you respect her marriage, but you've been sleeping with her for a month? Ethan's face reddened. It's complicated. Is it? Because from where I sit, it looks pretty simple. You wanted to sleep with my wife, so you did. Mike, Monica interjected. This kind of hostility isn't productive. You're right, Monica. Let's be productive. Why don't you tell us about your relationship with Ethan? Monica blinked. My relationship? You two dated 2 years ago, before you moved to town, before you became Jessica's friend, before you started encouraging her to have an affair. The cabin went dead quiet. Jessica was staring at Monica with a confused expression. That's not relevant, Monica said. Isn't it? You introduced Jessica to Ethan. You encouraged their relationship. You covered for them, lied for them, helped them plan their meetings, and all the time you were manipulating both of them. I was helping Jessica explore her options. No, you were getting revenge. On me, for telling your husband about your affair 5 years ago. On Ms. Carroway for outbidding you on that downtown property. On everyone who ever stood in your way. Jessica was looking back and forth between Monica and me like she was watching a tennis match. What is he talking about, Monica? Monica's composure was starting to crack. He's paranoid, Jess. He's making things up to avoid taking responsibility for his own failures as a husband. Am I? I pulled out the documents I'd printed at the town hall. Property records showing you tried to buy Jessica's building. Court records from your divorce, showing I was the one who exposed your affair. Business records showing Ethan owes you money from a failed deal. I spread the papers on the table like I was laying down a winning hand. You've been planning this for years, Monica, getting close to Jessica, earning her trust, then manipulating her into an affair that would destroy her marriage and her career, and when the dust settled, you'd be there to pick up the pieces. Maybe take over some of her cases, maybe even her position at the firm. Monica stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. Jessica, you don't have to listen to this. But Jessica was reading the documents, her face getting paler by the minute. You dated Ethan, she said quietly. You never told me you dated him. It wasn't serious. You tried to buy my building. You've been planning this. Jessica, listen to me. You destroyed my marriage. Jessica was on her feet now, her voice rising. You manipulated me into having an affair so you could get revenge on my husband. That's not what happened. Then what did happen? I asked. Because from where I sit, it looks like you spent 2 years planning the perfect revenge. Get close to my wife, manipulate her into cheating, destroy our marriage, and ruin both our lives. All because I told your husband the truth about what kind of person you really are. Monica's mask finally slipped completely. The friendly, concerned expression was gone, replaced by pure hatred. You destroyed my life, she snarled. My marriage, my career, everything. You self-righteous bastard, you cost me everything I'd worked for. So, you decided to return the favor. You deserved it, both of you. Jessica with her perfect marriage and her perfect career, and you with your smug moral superiority. You both deserve to lose everything. Jessica was staring at Monica like she'd never seen her before. You were my friend. I was never your friend. I was using you, just like you used me to make yourself feel better about your boring life. Ethan, who'd been silent through most of this exchange, finally spoke up. Monica, what the hell are you doing? Shut up, Ethan. You're just as pathetic as the rest of them. I thought we agreed. We agreed you'd seduce Jessica and then disappear when things got complicated. But you couldn't even do that right, could you? You had to fall for her, make it real. Jessica turned to Ethan. This was all planned? From the beginning? Ethan looked like he wanted to disappear. Not all of it. I mean, Monica introduced us, but my feelings for you are real. Your feelings? Jessica laughed, but there was no humor in it. You were hired to seduce me? It wasn't like that. What was it like, Ethan? I asked, because it sounds like Monica paid you to destroy my marriage. She forgave a debt, Ethan said quietly. I owed her money, and she said if I could get Jessica to leave you, we'd call it even. The cabin was silent, except for the sound of Jessica crying. Not the delicate tears of a woman seeking sympathy, but the harsh, broken sobs of someone whose world had just collapsed. Jessica, Monica said, her voice softer now, you have to understand. Get out, Jessica said. What? Get out. Both of you, get out of my sight. Monica and Ethan looked at each other, then at me. I shrugged. You heard her. They left, Monica still trying to justify herself and Ethan mumbling apologies that nobody wanted to hear. When the door closed behind them, Jessica and I were alone. I'm sorry, she said. God, Mike, I'm so sorry. I looked at my wife, my broken, manipulated, devastated wife, and felt something crack inside my chest. But it wasn't forgiveness. It was something colder. Are you? I asked. Yes. I know I can't undo what I did, but if you'll let me try. Try what, Jess? Try to pretend this never happened? Try to go back to the way things were? We can go to counseling. We can work through this. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark lake. You know what the funny thing is? If you'd just come to me and said you were unhappy, if you'd said you wanted something different, we could have talked about it. We could have figured it out together. I know. But instead, you let Monica manipulate you into cheating on me. You brought your boyfriend into our house in front of our daughters on Valentine's Day. I wasn't thinking clearly. I turned back to face her. No, you were thinking very clearly. You were thinking about yourself, about what you wanted, about how a blue-collar husband didn't fit the image of the successful lawyer you wanted to be. That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time you introduced me to your colleagues as your husband instead of just Mike? When was the last time you seemed proud to be married to me? Jessica couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. I loved you, Jess. I would have done anything for you. But you threw that away for a man who was paid to seduce you by a woman who wanted to destroy us both. I walked to the door. Where are you going? Home. To pack your things. Mike, please. You made your choice, Jessica. Now live with it. I left her there in the cabin, crying alone in the dark. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something like peace. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed for the first time in days. Jessica had come home sometime after midnight. I'd heard her car in the driveway, but she'd slept in the guest room again. I made breakfast for Emily and Sophie, who seemed to sense that something had changed, but were smart enough not to ask questions. Jessica came downstairs as I was packing their lunches, looking like she hadn't slept at all. Girls, she said, can you give your father and me a few minutes? Emily and Sophie exchanged glances, then headed upstairs. Smart kids. They knew when to make themselves scarce. I've been thinking, Jessica said. Have you? About what you said last night. About us. About what I threw away. I kept making sandwiches, not looking at her. I want to fight for our marriage, Mike. I want to prove to you that I can be the wife you deserve. The wife I deserve? Yes. I finally looked at her. The wife I deserve wouldn't have cheated on me in the first place. People make mistakes. This wasn't a mistake, Jess. This was a choice. A series of choices. You chose to listen to Monica. You chose to get involved with Ethan. You chose to lie to me, to our daughters, to everyone who cared about us. I know, but you chose to bring him into our house. You chose to humiliate me in front of people I have to see every day in this town. You chose to let our daughters think their father was some kind of loser who didn't deserve respect. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I can make it up to you. How? How do you make up for destroying 15 years of trust? How do you make up for letting our neighbors gossip about what a fool I am? How do you make up for teaching our daughters that marriage vows don't mean anything? I don't know, but I want to try. I finished packing the lunches and turned to face her fully. You know what the really sad part is? If Monica hadn't manipulated you, if you'd just had an affair on your own, I might have been able to forgive you eventually. But you let someone else destroy our marriage. You were so weak, so easily manipulated, that you let a woman who hated us both convince you to throw away everything we'd built together. She seemed like a friend. She seemed like someone who told you what you wanted to hear, that you deserved better, that I wasn't good enough for you, that our marriage was holding you back. Jessica couldn't deny it, because it was true. I'm filing for divorce, I said. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. Mike, please. I'm filing for divorce and I'm asking for primary custody of the girls. You can't do that. I can and I will. You want to know why? Because Emily's been posting on social media about Mom's new life and Dad the loser. Because Sophie asked me last week if I was going to move out like Tommy Morrison's dad did. Because our daughters have been watching their mother cheat on their father, and they've been learning that it's acceptable. Jessica's face went white. The girls don't know. The girls know everything, Jess. Kids always know. They just don't always understand what they're seeing. I grabbed the lunch boxes and headed for the door. Where are you going? To take our daughters to school, then to work, then to a lawyer's office. Mike, wait. But I was already gone. That afternoon, I met with Patricia Hendricks, the best divorce attorney in town. She was a tough, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd handled some of the messiest divorces in the county. I've heard rumors about your situation, she said after I'd explained everything. The whole town's talking about it. I figured. You have documentation of the affair? I showed her the photos, the GPS tracking data, the motel records, everything I'd gathered over the past 2 weeks. This is thorough, she said, impressed. You could have been a private investigator. I just wanted to know the truth. Well, you've got it. And with this evidence, plus the manipulation angle with Monica Walsh, we can make a strong case for primary custody and a favorable property settlement. I don't want to destroy Jessica financially. I just want her to understand that actions have consequences. Patricia nodded. We'll be fair but firm. She made her choices. Now she lives with the results. That evening, I sat Emily and Sophie down for the conversation I'd been dreading. Your mom and I are getting divorced, I said simply. Emily nodded like she'd been expecting it. Sophie looked confused. Is it because of Mom's friend? Emily asked. So she did know. It's because your mom and I can't trust each other anymore, I said, and marriage doesn't work without trust. Are we going to have to move? Sophie asked. No, you're going to stay here with me. Your mom will find her own place, and you'll visit her on weekends. What about school? And our friends? Nothing changes for you girls except that your parents won't be living together anymore. We talked for another hour, with Emily asking pointed questions and Sophie trying to understand why families sometimes break apart. They were handling it better than I'd expected, which probably said something about how bad things had gotten between Jessica and me. The next few days passed in a blur of legal paperwork and tense conversations. Jessica tried several times to convince me to reconsider, but I'd made my decision. She'd chosen Ethan and Monica over our family, and now she had to live with the consequences. On Thursday, exactly 2 weeks after I'd first discovered the affair, I was at Murphy's Tavern having dinner when Monica walked in. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect hair disheveled. She spotted me at the bar and walked over with the kind of determination that meant trouble. "This is all your fault," she said without preamble. "Is it?" "Jessica's career is ruined. Ethan's business is collapsing. The whole town is talking about what happened at the cabin. Funny how that works. Actions have consequences. You recorded us, didn't you? That's why everyone knows exactly what was said." I'd live-streamed the whole confrontation to about 20 people, and by now the story had spread through the entire town. The details were remarkably accurate, which meant people weren't just gossiping, they were reporting what they'd actually seen and heard. "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said. "You son of a bitch, you planned this whole thing." "I planned to find out the truth. Everything else was just you and Jessica and Ethan being yourselves." Monica's face was twisted with rage. "You think you've won, but you haven't. Jessica will realize what a mistake she's making. She'll come back to you, and when she does, she won't." "How can you be so sure?" I turned to face Monica fully. "Because I don't want her back." "You succeeded, Monica. You destroyed my marriage, congratulations. But you also destroyed Jessica's career, Ethan's business, and your own reputation in the process. Was it worth it?" Monica stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out of the bar without another word. Jules came over with another beer I hadn't ordered. "That woman's going to leave town," he said. "Mark my words, she can't show her face around here anymore." "Probably." "You okay with all this, Mike? The divorce, I mean?" I thought about it. Was I okay? My marriage was over. My daughters were going to grow up in a broken home. My life as I'd known it for 15 years was finished. "Yeah," I said, "I'm okay." And surprisingly, I was. Friday afternoon, I got a call from Greg. "Jessica's moving out this weekend," he said. "She asked me to help her pack." "That's fine. She's pretty broken up about all this." "I'm sure she is." "Mike, I know she screwed up, but she's still my sister. She's not a bad person, just a weak one." "I know that, Greg. But weak people can do just as much damage as bad people. Sometimes more because you don't see it coming." "What are you going to tell the girls about their mom?" "The truth. That I love them, that their mom loves them, but that sometimes adults make choices that change everything." Greg was quiet for a moment. "You're a better man than I would be in your situation." "No, I'm not. I'm just a man who's tired of being played for a fool." That weekend, Jessica moved into a small apartment across town. Emily and Sophie helped her pack, which was both heartbreaking and necessary. They needed to see that this was really happening, that their family was changing permanently. Sunday evening, after Jessica had taken the last of her things, I sat in my living room looking around at the house that was now just mine. It felt empty, but not lonely. Different, but not wrong. Emily came downstairs and sat next to me on the couch. "Dad?" "Yeah? Are you going to be okay?" I put my arm around my daughter, this smart, perceptive girl who'd inherited the best parts of both her parents. "I'm going to be fine," I said. "We all are." "Even Mom?" "Even Mom. It might take her a while to figure things out, but she'll be okay too." Emily nodded and leaned against me. "I'm proud of you, Dad." "Why?" "Because you didn't let them make you into someone you're not. You stayed yourself." Out of the mouths of babes. Monday morning, I went back to work for the first time in a week. I had 3 security installations scheduled and a backlog of service calls. Normal life was calling, and I was ready to answer. Around lunch, I got a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for everything. I hope someday you can forgive me. Jessica." I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Some things couldn't be forgiven. Not because they were too terrible, but because forgiveness would require forgetting, and I never wanted to forget the lessons I'd learned about trust, manipulation, and the price of weakness. That evening, I was installing a security system for the Hendersons when Mrs. Henderson brought up the subject everyone in town was talking about. "I heard Monica Walsh is leaving town," she said, "moving back to Springfield." Is that so? And Ethan Morrison's business is up for sale. Apparently, he can't get clients anymore. Interesting. Mrs. Henderson looked at me with something like admiration. You know, Mike, a lot of people are saying you handled this whole situation with class. I just handled it honestly. That's what I mean. That night, I sat on my back porch with a beer, looking up at the stars and thinking about the past month. 4 weeks ago, I'd been a married man with what I thought was a stable family. Now I was divorced, single-parenting 2 teenagers, and starting over at 42. But I wasn't angry anymore. The cold, hard thing in my chest had melted away, replaced by something lighter. Relief, maybe, or just the absence of pretense. My phone buzzed with a text from Red. "Gym's open if you want to work out some stress." I texted back, "Thanks, but I'm good. See you tomorrow." And I was good. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with exactly the life I'd chosen, rather than the one that had been chosen for me. Jessica had gotten what she'd wanted, freedom from a marriage she'd outgrown. Ethan had gotten what he'd deserved, the consequences of his actions. Monica had gotten what she'd planned, revenge, though it had cost her everything else. And I'd gotten what I'd needed, the truth. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. I finished my beer, went inside, and locked the door behind me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something better than what had been destroyed. But tonight, I was content to sit in my own house, surrounded by the security system I'd installed to protect what mattered most: my daughters, my integrity, and the life I was building from the ashes of the one that had burned down. Real men, it turned out, didn't waste time cooking elaborate dinners for people who didn't appreciate them. Real men protected what they loved, fought for what they believed in, and walked away from what couldn't be saved. I'd learned that lesson the hard way, but I'd learned it completely, and that made all the difference.